Imagine this. You wake up one morning with the bright, hopeful conviction that everything is going to change. You've read the books, watched the speeches, followed the mantras. Think positive, they told you. Your thoughts create your reality. You smile. You breathe in the morning air. And you start to push yourself forward with an invisible force. The promise that your mindset will shape your world. But as the day unfolds, that optimism begins to crack. The emails still sting. The bills still stack up. The setbacks. The disappointments. The haunting quiet of unfulfilled dreams. They don't disappear. In fact, sometimes they feel heavier, almost worse than before. You wonder why. If positive thinking is the key, why is it so painfully inadequate? Why does it sometimes feel like a cruel joke? What if everything you've been told about positivity, the relentless cheer, the endless optimism, is not just incomplete, but dangerously misleading? What if beneath this shiny surface lies a darker truth, a shadow no one warns you about, a shadow that doesn't just deny hardship, but silences pain, masks failure, and even traps you deeper inside yourself? Could it be that the very act of forcing happiness, denying the unpleasant, and pretending everything is fine, is paradoxically what keeps you stuck? What if the pressure to stay positive is a silent tormentor, a subtle oppressor that isolates you in loneliness, because you can't admit when you're struggling? Imagine the weight of a smile worn like armor, the exhaustion of burying real emotions just to avoid judgment or self-reproach. Imagine the quiet, gnawing doubt that maybe you're failing, not because of your circumstances, but because the system of positive thinking itself is broken. What if the culture of positivity is not a path to freedom, but a cage gilded in good intentions? Is it possible that this obsession with positive thinking blinds us to the complexity of human experience? That it forces us to reject parts of ourselves that are essential, messy, and real? If so, what price do we pay for this denial? Not just individually, but as a society. Now, pause and ask yourself, have you ever felt the crushing loneliness of pretending to be okay when you're not? The quiet desperation behind the smile. The fear that admitting pain means failure. What happens when the positive mantra no longer suffices? When it becomes a barrier, not a bridge? This is the great contradiction. The bright promise of positivity that too often leads to a darker, deeper struggle. The question is not just why it fails, but how it became such an unquestioned gospel. Why do so many cling to it despite the cracks? And more importantly, what lies beyond this surface, waiting to be uncovered? Prepare yourself to journey past the glittering facade of Think Positive into a world where true freedom comes from confronting the shadow beneath. Where pain is not the enemy, but a teacher. Where reality is not simplified into good vibes and bad vibes, but embraced in all its raw, unsettling complexity. You might find this unsettling. You might resist it. But what if this is the key to breaking free from a trap disguised as hope? What if your liberation depends on seeing the dark side of positive thinking, not as defeat, but as an essential step toward genuine growth and healing? Keep this question alive. Let it sit with you like a weight, like a challenge you can't ignore. Because the next step in this journey will reveal the hidden forces that have been shaping your mind and soul all along, and why understanding them is urgent, even life-changing. Beneath the radiant glow of relentless optimism lies a shadow few dare to acknowledge. The problem with positive thinking is not that it encourages hope, it's that it demands suppression. It asks you to deny the darker, more complicated parts of your experience. This denial isn't accidental. It's baked deep into psychological and philosophical currents, shaping how we understand ourselves and the world. Thinkers like Carl Jung warned about the danger of ignoring the shadow within, the repressed emotions, fears, and impulses that we push out of consciousness because they make us uncomfortable. According to Jung, when you refuse to face this shadow, it doesn't disappear. It festers, often controlling you from the darkness without your awareness. Positive thinking, when taken to extremes, becomes a collective denial of that shadow self. Philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche and Arthur Schopenhauer have long argued that life is filled with suffering and conflict, and that authentic growth comes not from pretending otherwise, but from confronting this reality head-on. Nietzsche's idea of amor fati, the love of one's fate, including suffering, suggests that true strength emerges only when you embrace all aspects of existence, not just the pleasant ones. Positive thinking, in contrast, often teaches you to reject fate's harsh truths, pushing you toward a fragile, superficial happiness. Jean-Paul Sartre's existentialism highlights a different but related truth, that freedom comes with the weight of facing your own despair and absurdity. When positivity masks despair, it can imprison you in a lie, blocking the painful but necessary realization that you must create meaning amid chaos, not avoid chaos itself. Even Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of concentration camps, showed us that finding meaning through suffering is what saves us, not blind optimism detached from reality. Positive thinking, if it's only about feeling good or forcing happiness, misses this profound insight. It can become a cheap replacement for the harder work of meaning-making. At the societal level, the rise of positivity culture is intertwined with neoliberalism's demand for individual responsibility above all else. When you're told to just think positive no matter your circumstances, the blame for failure silently shifts onto you. Struggle becomes a personal moral failing, rather than a systemic problem. This intensifies isolation, guilt, and shame. This is the hidden force shaping behavior and identity, a cultural imperative to appear strong, upbeat, and in control at all times, no matter what you're enduring. You learn to silence vulnerability, hide doubt, and reject any emotion that might threaten your image of success. The consequence, a fractured self, split between the public performance of happiness and a private landscape of unacknowledged pain. This split breeds anxiety, depression, and a deep sense of alienation, because the true self is never allowed full expression or acceptance. But this is only the beginning. Beneath the surface of forced cheerfulness lies a dangerous paradox. The very mindset designed to empower you can erode your sense of self and distort your understanding of reality. It does not liberate, it confines. And yet, so many cling to it, desperately clutching the promise of positivity while unknowingly sinking deeper into its trap. What lies ahead is to unravel these layers, to expose how this hidden force operates, why it feels so inevitable, and how it shapes your inner world in ways you may never have realized. Understanding this is not just academic, it is the first step toward reclaiming your mind, your emotions, and your freedom. Hold on to that thought as we move forward, because what comes next will reveal the subtle but devastating ways this trap warps your life, and why breaking free is urgent, not optional. You might not notice it at first. The subtle way this culture of relentless positivity seeps into your mind, reshaping your inner landscape without permission. It's in the quiet moments when you hesitate to share your true feelings, when you mask anxiety with forced smiles, or when you scroll endlessly through social media filled with curated happiness. These seemingly small acts add up, bending your reality into a shape that doesn't fit you, and yet feels mandatory. Cognitive biases play a sinister role here. Take the confirmation bias. Your mind selectively notices and remembers only what supports the idea that you must stay positive, that vulnerability is weakness. Every time you feel doubt or despair, it's buried beneath layers of self-reproach and social judgment. The brain's neurological pathways strengthen this cycle, creating a feedback loop where suppression of negative emotion becomes automatic and unconscious. Then there's the negativity bias paradox. Humans are wired to notice threats and pain more strongly than pleasures, because survival depended on it. But positivity culture demands you fight against this natural wiring, telling you to ignore the alarm signals your body and mind send. The result? You're caught between two conflicting forces, an innate alertness to suffering and an external pressure to deny it. This creates internal tension, an invisible war where your emotions become battlegrounds. Culturally, we've normalized what sociologists call emotional labor, the effort it takes to maintain appearances, to perform happiness in public spaces regardless of how fractured we feel inside. This labor exhausts you, creating emotional burnout, loneliness, and a sense of disconnection not just from others but from yourself. You become a spectator to your own life, watching but not fully living. At a societal scale, this denial of pain reinforces dangerous narratives, that failure is personal, that asking for help is weakness, that hardship is shameful. This quiet erasure of suffering disables communities from addressing root causes of problems, leaving systemic issues festering unseen beneath polished surfaces. The silence around pain also fuels isolation. When everyone is pretending to be fine, admitting struggle feels like a betrayal or a risk. You become trapped in a lonely echo chamber of your own hidden despair, convinced you're alone in feeling broken. And here is the urgency. This trap is not just about discomfort. It's about your sense of self, your identity, your freedom, your ability to grow and heal. The refusal to face complexity reduces you to a caricature, a smiling mask, fragile and brittle beneath. If you continue down this path, you risk losing touch with your true emotions, your authentic voice, and your capacity for genuine connection. Worse, you risk confusing denial with healing, illusion with truth. Yet paradoxically, many cling tighter to positivity because the alternative, embracing discomfort, uncertainty and pain, feels terrifying. The unknown is scary. The shadow is frightening. But without stepping into that darkness, the light you seek will never be more than a flicker. So the question becomes, how do you break this cycle? How do you reclaim your emotional depth, your freedom to feel fully, without being swallowed by despair? How do you dismantle the cultural and neurological chains that keep you locked inside a superficial smile? These are not easy answers. They demand courage, honesty, and a radical shift in perspective. But they are necessary, because until you see the cage clearly, you cannot find the key. Hold that tension. Feel it fully. The breakthrough lies just beyond this discomfort, waiting to transform everything you thought you knew about positivity and yourself. What if the key to freedom isn't in forcing yourself to smile harder, but in allowing the full spectrum of your emotions to breathe? This radical shift, embracing darkness alongside light, runs counter to everything positivity culture preaches. Yet it is the revolution your mind and soul desperately need. Breaking free begins with permission. Permission to feel anger, fear, sadness, doubt, not as failures, but as vital signals and teachers. When you stop fighting these emotions, you disarm their power over you. This is not resignation or defeat. It's radical acceptance, a courageous act of reclaiming your humanity. History offers powerful examples. Viktor Frankl survived unspeakable horrors not by pretending they didn't exist, but by finding meaning through suffering. Nelson Mandela endured decades in prison, not by suppressing anger or despair, but by acknowledging them and choosing purpose beyond pain. Their strength came not from blind optimism, but from embracing complexity. Practically, this rebellion looks like small but profound acts. Speaking your truth without apology, resisting the urge to plaster on a smile when it feels fake, allowing yourself to rest in discomfort. It means rejecting the tyranny of good vibes only, and making space for real conversations about failure, grief, and frustration. You start to question the narratives imposed on you. Who says positivity means you must hide pain? Who profits when you blame yourself for struggles? By reclaiming these questions, you destabilize the mental structures that uphold forced cheerfulness. Psychologically, this means rewiring your brain away from denial toward curiosity. Mindfulness practices, journaling, therapy, and honest self-reflection become tools to map your inner world, not avoid it. You begin to see negative emotions not as enemies, but as parts of yourself calling for attention and integration. On a cultural level, this rebellion sparks connection. When you drop the mask, others often do too. Vulnerability becomes a bridge instead of a weakness. Collective healing begins when pain is no longer taboo. But make no mistake, this path demands resilience. It requires facing discomfort head-on and tolerating uncertainty, without quick fixes. It's a lifelong journey, not a one-time event. Yet the power it offers is transformative. You move from being a prisoner of positivity's hollow promises to an architect of authentic well-being. You learn to hold paradox, to dance with discomfort, and in doing so reclaim your wholeness. This rebellion is not just a personal act. It's a quiet revolution against a culture that profits from your silence. It's a reclaiming of your mind, your emotions, and your freedom. You are no longer at the mercy of forced happiness. You become the author of your own emotional truth, crafting a reality where joy and sorrow coexist, each with its rightful place. Here it is. True freedom isn't about thinking positive, it's about embracing reality fully, without filters. Happiness isn't the goal, authenticity is. When you stop chasing forced optimism and allow yourself to feel everything, joy, pain, doubt, fear, you reclaim your power. This acceptance breaks the illusion that you must always be okay. It frees you from the pressure to perform happiness and dissolves the shame tied to struggle. You realize that pain is not your enemy, but a necessary part of growth and meaning. The ultimate truth is this: life is complex, messy, and uncertain. Only by owning that complexity can you live genuinely and deeply. Positivity isn't a cure, it's a mask. Removing it reveals your true self, resilient and whole. So stop running from discomfort, lean into it. That is where real strength lives. Let this truth settle in. Let it unsettle you, because once you see clearly, nothing will ever feel the same again.